is now called to order. Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Kramer?
Here.
Mrs. Rich?
Here.
Mrs. Gallagher?
Here.
Mr. Kravchuk? Here. Mr. Parsik?
Here.
Mr. Moore?
Here.
The meeting is now open. Adequate notice of the meeting was provided by posting a copy of the time and place on the municipal clerk's bulletin board and mailing a copy of same to the press in the Cape May County Herald on January 4th, 2018. Will everyone please rise to salute the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we get started with the budget presentations, Mrs. Kramer has asked for a couple of minutes to update council on the League of Municipalities meeting from this past Thursday night.
Yes, thank you very much. The County League of Municipalities meeting was held on Thursday, November 4th. The county has instituted warming centers when there is a code blue. They would like each municipality to participate and establish their own warming center, which the county would subsidize, which is very important. Public safety should probably take a look at this and see how we can implement that into Stone Harbor's program. They also spoke about the proposed wind farms and Orsted, and several thoughts and questions arose. The offshore mills have a 20-year cycle. What happens to them at that time? How will they be removed? Property values, possibility of going down. Tourism must be considered. It will probably be affected. Even though the projection is several miles off the island, how will it impact fishing, boating, and visual? Will people from Cape May County be hired, or will the employees come from other areas? It was suggested to everyone to Google Wolf Island in New York. One of the guests there at the meeting has a home, and see what is going on there. And according to her, it's not so pleasant. Each and every taxpayer will be assessed a certain amount each year. It will be a nominal fee, but each taxpayer in New Jersey will be assessed an amount for those. Suggestion was made that each municipality ask for a more animated mock-up showing exactly what the project will entail, and I think we had asked for that as a council to see what it visually will actually look like, and therefore. The next topic was Atlantic Cape College, beginning in the September of 2019, will be free college this is a program through the state grant from New Jersey for qualifying students. The adjusted gross income has to be under $45,000. There is no cost to apply, and you have to register for a minimum of 6 credits. Registration already began on November 1st. Also, if you had taken courses years ago and maybe only completed a year, you are eligible to go back if you're under that $45,000 gross. So it's really an exciting program for Atlantic Cape Community College. And the last thing, the league would like to have every municipality attend their meetings. As you know, for the last 9 years I've gone. So, and their next meeting is January 24th in Cape May. And that's the end. Thank you so much.
Interesting. Thank you, Joan. Are we going to be doing the budget? Well, before, has anybody need any clarification? I want to ask Joan for any questions about anything she just mentioned. Are we going to be putting the budget up?
Yeah, you
Okay.
have the engineer do his report first and
Okay.
jump into that.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. On the capital project front, we had a pre-construction meeting for the 2018 Utility and Road Program on November 21st, and based on that meeting, the contractor indicated they'll be starting work next week in the southern end of the borough and working its way north. Next item is the 95th Street bathroom renovation project and the 82nd Street tennis court building projects. They are still progressing well and on budget. The bathroom project is scheduled to be completed the 3rd week of December. That's what the contractor indicated. And the tennis court project building is scheduled to be completed the 2nd week of January. The final phase of the borough's new GIS upgrades is the utility mapping, and that is scheduled to be completed for grant by this Friday, if not early next week. Lastly, the Beach Patrol Building Assessment Report was completed and transmitted to the borough yesterday. So at this point, you need to review that and then decide on your next course of action. One other item, if I could, just hit some highlights on our year-end summary report that was provided to Mayor and Council, I believe, today via email and hard copy. First part, again, we'd like to thank you for the ability to serve the borough as a municipal engineer. To better serve you, we have prepared the summary of services which take us through January 1st to December 1st. So here we go. Our office completed 2 Planning and Zoning Board escrow reviews, 7 bulkhead reviews. We reviewed, processed, and inspected over 127 street openings, Poor Lane. We provided project management, design engineering, and consulting on approximately 10 capital projects. We provided engineering support on 3 grant and loan initiatives. Over the past year, we have worked approximately 3,900 hours in serving the borough in terms of man-hours. We have successfully managed and will continue to manage $3.5 million worth of capital projects. Additionally, a couple of highlights of things that we were able to accomplish this year. That would be on page 2. Just going to run down this real quick. First one is we provided approximately 200 in-house office hours at no cost to the borough. We were successful in assisting you in creating your new bulkhead ordinance and the application procedures, which has been interesting. Third item is we assisted the borough in determining that the Cape May County Open Space Board can provide grant funding to the Bayside Marine Park. So once that is decided what that's going to be, we're eligible for those improvements. We successfully completed a facility analysis on the bar lifeguard building that I mentioned before, which was delivered yesterday. We completed several flood mitigation alternatives for the Bayside Marina boat ramp. That was done earlier in the spring. And lastly, we feel that we configured a new user-friendly web-based GIS mapping system that displays your elevation certificates, tax maps, and as of Friday or early next week, the utility infrastructure as-builts. And again, thank you for the opportunity to serve this year.
Any questions for Mark?
Okay, tonight is the beginning of our discussion on the operating budgets. What we're showing you now are what has been requested from each individual department. In early January, we will be scheduling a meeting with the A&F committee to start going into these requests in detail, making any modifications that we might feel is appropriate. All the departments have met with their respective committees, either in person or by email or phone conversations to go over some of these requests. All right, I will start with Borough Administration. Basically, last year's budget was $29,000. I am currently requesting $30,788. There are slight increases based on actual expenditures, primarily under computer services, updates, and repairs. And pretty much my increase. Under the first line item, office supplies, that's the general purchases of ink, paper, pens, et cetera, and that also includes my administrative secretary. Dues and subscriptions, 206, New Jersey car motor vehicle lookup, that is utilized for verification for all employees who drive municipal vehicles that they're run every year to make sure that they in fact have valid driver's license. New Jersey League of Magazine, and we pay a subscription to create our quarterly newsletter. Then if you go to 209, equipment service policies, that's our share of the copier expense, and also for the domain renewals for our websites. Under 211, promotional advertising, that's for our informational brochures that we put out, and then the biggest expense is for our flood map brochures that have to be mailed out every year under the insurance CRS program. Under 213, under computer repair supplies, mail route, which is supposed to diminish the number of spam emails we get. That's a challenge literally every day. We have the spyware, miscellaneous supplies, and like I said, the biggest expense there is the computer maintenance that we pay an outside individual to assist in the maintenance of all of our computer software and hardware. And that's pretty much, hold on, sorry. Under 214, tuition training and updates, it's the LIG, any chamber forms that may come up, and any miscellaneous training that may come up during the year that I think may be valuable to go to. Under 215, conference and travel, that's expenses for the League of Municipalities. Under professional fees, the CRS, there's $6,000 for if there's any enhancements. One of the things Mark had explained this year, we utilize that funding to automate our elevation certificates on the website. I cover the web hosting for the borough and for our emergency management site. I've got money in here in case there's a grant that may become available, and there may be fees attached to that for our professionals. And then any miscellaneous consulting needs that may come up that council's is desirous of. So that money is in there just in case for that. So that's pretty much everything for administration and finance. The next department would be mayor and council. Lori, can't talk. Okay, under mayor and council, last year's budget was $12,987. 2019 anticipated at this point is $14,077. The biggest increase there is under dues and subscriptions, and I'll go over the details of that. Sorry. Okay. Under office supplies, that's letterhead, envelopes, any type of presentations, and the costs for the parking permits. Under 206, that's the dues and subscription. Included in there are the nonprofit supports, Volunteer in Medicine, the Mammal Stranding Center, the American Legion, and for the Coast Guard. And then we also have our various New Jersey Conference of Mayors, Cape May County Conference of Mayors, League of Municipalities, Cape May County League of Municipalities, which Joan was just talking about the last meeting. We contribute to the Middle Township After Prom Party and Jersey Shore Partnership, and then the League of Municipalities subscriptions. Okay, the next is, yeah.
The American Legion activities, that covers those four?
That it covers all of the events that they do. It did.
More, I thought it was 5,000.
No, it's 3, and yeah, the actual expenses over the last couple of years has just been less than 3,000, so, yeah, that seems to be sufficient so far.
Okay.
Under 214, that's for new council member training. Under 215, conference and travel expenses, New Jersey Conference of Mayors, the League Fall Conference, the Mayor's League Luncheon, miscellaneous that may come up, and the mayor's box lunch at the Lig. And then professional fees, that's actually for the RGO updates. That's our code book. As you create new ordinances and they get updated into the code, that covers the fee for the company to update that. And that is everything under mayor and council. The next one would be the clerk's office, and Carrie is very excited to present that.
We're doing the report too for the month? Monthly reports too, or you just want me to start with the budget?
You can go ahead and do your report real quick. I don't
There's
want
not
to take
much
a couple seconds, sure.
Total collected for the month of November in the clerk's office, $1,059. And total collected in the construction office was $54,302. And now on to our budget. Nothing has changed. We had $19,500 for this year. Next year, we're proposing the same amount, $19,500. We just moved money around. We upped from $7,000 to $8,500 for legal advertising. Office supplies, we went up from $3,000 to $3,300, just because every 2 years we buy all of our placards for all of the permits that we do through our office. Dues and subscriptions stayed the same at $2,500. Equipment and service contracts, we had that at $5,000 this year, and by the end of this year, we were only thinking about $3,000, so we moved it down to $3,500. Equipment purchases, we kept the same at $200. For the tuition, training seminars, and travel conferences, we kind of grouped them together and split it up. So we have $250 for the tuition and training seminars, because we usually use that for all the local training that we do. And then travel and conferences at the League, and if we have to go up to Freehold for any of the clerks' conferences. That's at $750. Line item 222, contingent expenses, from $500, we put it down to $250. And then general and classified, we estimated 0 for this year, and we just, rounded that down to, $250. We split up that $500 from the contingent expenses. So it stayed the same. That's all I have.
Okay. Next would be finance. You have yours?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. The overall finance budget is the same as last year, $57,960. We did make some small alignment changes in appropriations. Postage, we increased by $580. NJ EIT administrative fees, we increased by $350, and payroll processing reduced by $500. The bulk of the budget is 41% is postage cost, and that was the $23,580. The second largest one is the payroll processing cost, and that's the cost to have CASA payroll, prepare the payroll, and the W-2s at year end. And then the NJEIT administrative fees is the last of the largest, biggest pieces, and that's the cost of the NJEIT environmental loans, the administrative cost. That's it, yeah, if there's any questions.
And the audit remains the same, 30, right? Okay. Okay, tax collection.
So for the tax budget, I increased it by 2%, which was roughly $252. My line items are basically the same. I moved some monies from one line item to another in an effort to incorporate a new line item. I'll talk about that after I present the two budgets. My utility budget stayed the same, no increase. So this new line item that I'm interested in is for the Tax and Utilities Office. It's called PayArgo. It's an automatic file system. For all the checks that we receive from residents who make online payments, we receive stacks of checks in our office with wrong information on it. Some of them literally say payment, and it'll be under an LLC or a corporation, and we don't know where to post them. Other problems with these are that the resident will set it up on his computer to pay the tax payment this month, and then forget to change it to the utility account number when he goes to pay the water bill. So it gets posted to the water bill instead of to the taxes, and vice versa. So we're doing a lot of internal transfers with that method. It costs us a lot of time and energy and research to do this. So we looked into this program called PayArgo, and the PayArgo file system will streamline all this for me and send me an electronic file where I can download it like I do my escrow files for my bank codes. It's a $996 one-time startup fee, which would be split between taxes and utilities. So the one-time startup fee would be $448 for each department, and then it's 15 cents per transaction for the year. And we figured, well, we didn't figure, we've been counting how many we get, and we have roughly 600 of these checks that come in for taxes and for utilities. So that's $360 per department on transaction fees for the year. And this will pay for itself over and over again. So I'm really hoping that you all think that this is a good idea and back me up on this. And that's the only change I have in my budget. Should I go over all the line items?
No, you highlighted the one expense. What towns currently use this?
Lacey Township, and they don't know how they lived without it. So, does anyone have questions? The biggest line item on my utility budget is postage, obviously, for the utility bills. And other than that, everything stayed the same. So,
Thank you. Okay, next would be...
thank you.
Tax assessor.
Hi. My budget didn't change very much. In fact, it went from $15,155 to $15,105.
Way to go.
Is that the first reduction we've seen? The biggest change comes in professional fees and tax maps. The tax appeals have cost us more than I've ever seen before. So I'm hoping that that gets reduced, as I think this year it's probably going to be at least $5,000, just because the people who didn't file this year are still unhappy and they're going to file next year. So, but nothing has really changed. One thing on Chapter 75 notices and postage, 227, it should just say notices there, not postage. That's my mistake. And the postage for that is up at $208 and $1,200. So that takes care of the Chapter 75 notices that are statutory and need to be mailed out. Other than that, does anybody have any questions? Thank you.
Okay, next is construction, and Ray's going to fill in for Mike, who is out sick today.
Good afternoon. Just briefly before I start the budget, the construction report, the police station, we've done TCO inspections for electrical, fire, and plumbing. I guess if Mike's in tomorrow, maybe we'll be doing the building, so they're moving furniture in and things of that nature right now. The yacht club is progressing. The Reeds 2 also has a TCO for the occupancy rooms only. And the tennis building, as Mark was saying, I will be doing the underground electric service. They're digging the trench tomorrow for that to get the electric service into the tennis building. So we should be doing that inspection tomorrow. And the construction budget looks like there's an increase of $350 requested. Mike did move several of the figures around a little bit. Building inspection office supplies stayed the same. Building inspection dues and subscriptions went up $200. The inspection phones and pagers remained the same. Inspection service contracts looks like 200 more. But then inspection equipment purchases went down 600. So that accounts for some of that. And computer supplies and updates went down 150. Building inspection, tuition and training remained the same. Conference travel expenses is an additional 800. Inspection professional fees went up from 0 to 300. Inspection maps went from 500 to 0. Inspection uniforms increased 100. That's what he has for his construction. Any questions on any of that? I'm not sure I could answer them, but.
Under the travel and conferences, does that enter INTERMATION? What does that mean?
Give me a second, let me go to that.
The $1,200 for
Travel and
the, under travel and
Oh,
conference?
International Code
national-
Conference.
That's a national.
International?
That's the-
national,
And
yeah.
that changes location year to year. It's
But it's
it's
supposed to
wherever
say
the
international.
Yeah, International Code Council, yes.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Next would be planning
Do
board.
you want me to do the zoning board or no?
Well,
Oh,
I go
okay.
through my, you can stand there while I do this real quick, because zoning's next.
Okay.
I'll do planning board for Diane. Okay, there's actually no change in the budget request, $23,585. We will be discussing the planning board budget at our next planning board meeting. But as I said, there's really no changes in this. Obviously, the biggest expense is for our professional fees, which would be for our board solicitor. It's got the wrong name there for our planner. I have to change that for him, for her. And that's pretty much it. Now we'll go to zoning.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Zoning board, budget remained the same for the 2 years. The only thing we did was we changed one figure from, where was it? We increased legal advertising stayed the same. Office supplies, we dropped office supplies 500 and moved that down to professional fees. That was basically the only change from
Okay.
the two.
All right. Okay, that completes all of the admin and finance ones. Next up would be. How do you, Grant? Do you need a break? Yeah.
You want to take a break? It's going to take a while.
I'll move you along. Okay, first, I'll start with DPW. DPW General.
We went up $4,200 in different line items. Some of it is adjusted around for, it's the same with everybody else's budget. You got office supplies, dues, subscription, cell phone, speech, mailings, maintenance and service contracts, that actually went down for this group. Because we anticipated some of the contracts to be higher. So we adjusted that down. Equipment purchases went up, so there's down in one line item, went in another. Computer supplies stayed the same, tuition stayed the same. Travel expenses, that's, pretty much stays the same. Beach maintenance and engineering. I increased that by $1,500 in anticipation of any overages that we may have with some of the projects we
Grant, do we buy a warranty on those radios, or we don't have any?
There is a warranty for a year,
Okay.
but they do normally last us about 4 or 5 years. They get used pretty badly because of the type of work we do.
Exactly.
We lost a few recently, so get run over every other year, so drop off the truck or off of someone's hip, and they don't realize they lost it. Dune grass stays the same as for replacement along the dunes when we do maintenance work. Lumber and paint stay the same. Bulkhead repairs stay the same, licensing. That line item was used for registering our vehicles with DOT, with county, and Butler system went up $1,500. We lost our system last year, as well as a bunch of pilings, and we're looking to purchase a couple of more compressor pumps to increase the volume of water that we're putting into the system in order to keep pilings from being raised out of water when it freezes over. Marina and floats, usually cost us about $1,100 to replace the floats, and we're going to replace at least 4 of them this year. That's why that went up $1,000. Equipment repairs went down to $2,000 because of the anticipation of not having to spend as much money on repairing equipment. Vehicle repairs stayed the same. Tires went up $1,000. We do it for a lot of tires. Vehicle repairs did not change. I haven't really talked to the police department yet, but I'm anticipating that number may go up because of the age of the cars. Recreational vehicles staying the same, and miscellaneous went up $500.
Grant, you had talked about doing new street signs. Is that underneath your,
No,
that's not here because that's going to be capital?
Capital.
Okay.
that's already been
So these signs are just sort of the temporary ones around town?
placements, the crossing signs on business district, they run over.
Oh, those signs, okay, yeah.
That's what that is.
The pedestrians that get run over.
If you notice, a lot of our pedestrian crossing signs that look like traffic, they are fading in place. Those are ones, that type, if we do a full change out, it comes out of capital, which we are going to be doing with our regular street signs.
Solid waste.
Grant, does that, what about the, like the fire vehicles, the EMS ambulances and things?
Yeah.
Do you do maintenance on that?
Yes, we do.
But
some
that's in their
maintenance on it.
budget?
We don't do anything on the pumps with the apparatus. We do minor.
Okay, but that's in their budget? And then you just charge that?
Yes.
And that, what about the beach patrol? Is that
Same.
where,
That comes under rec.
okay.
Rec.
All right, solid waste.
Okay. Office supplies, dues and subscriptions, same thing here. Cell phone. Maintenance agreements, stay the same. Actually, this wasn't, let me see if I can find that $1,000.
Radios.
There's about $200 in radios, and about $300 in uniforms.
And recycle bags.
Your mis-
Where we at?
your miscellaneous, go down to the,
Recycling, that's trash bags for the beach and the public things.
There you go. Mhm. Your-
And if you see it right there, it says gasoline and oil, it says 0, that all comes out of one budget for all public works, all the municipal buildings. That's, police department.
Keep thinking there must be a better way to do that. Every Sunday and Tuesday between manpower, posting the signs, taking them down, they say the same thing week after week. Rain, there just seems to be a better, even manpower alone, posting them, writing them. Like if there can't be some sort of permanent sign that either gets either posted or the same sign put out every Sunday. Just seems like there must be a better way.
One year, we talked about, instead of it make it looking like it's an emergency, that it says special event on it. But
that's
then
what
you
we can't
still,
what's happening, right?
well, you still need a date on it, though, yeah.
Even if maybe one gigantic sign that's at the entranceway that you put out
Yeah,
or something, but it just seems like that it
Yeah.
becomes a mess when
They
it
do.
rains, but it's also the manpower that's, well, we do it every Tuesday night and every Sunday morning, all summer long. Put them down, take them up, put them down, take them up, and it just seems like it just has to be a better way.
Yeah, we'll have to talk to the chief about that, because I know whatever he's doing, he's based on his enforcement of the rules, but I agree, if there's something, I mean,
Well,
just prime example, when we had the signs for the parade, and we had to cancel the parade, all those signs had to get ripped down. So
Yeah.
that was like a waste, yeah. But
you just made me think, and those are put on the posts where there are not meters, they are kiosk spaces, some of them. If it was something like a attractive bag that went on top of them that would, I don't know,
Over and over again.
Yeah.
Somehow, I don't.
that can be
We
reused.
talked about it in the past,
Yeah.
that, but even the manpower hours alone,
Mhm.
you save on,
Yeah,
just having people do that. Once
Yeah.
a week, every week,
yeah,
all summer.
I agree. We can talk to the chief at our next public
Yeah.
safety meeting.
Something.
And they look horrible.
Building and grounds, Grant?
This is the one that's gone up a lot, and the reason for that is your service contracts. 209, now that we have 2 new buildings coming online between the police department and the new recreational support building. The contracts for the generators, everything.
For the elevators and the HA, the, no, but isn't it
HVAC.
covered over at the fire department?
Fire service.
They don't have an elevator there, I know that. They have one in the fire department, which is covered under there. I know that. I was talking about the fire company.
Equipment, numbers went down. We're not anticipating, spending, any money on, rocket screws on equipment. We did get quite a few, new pieces this year, which helped out a lot. Tuition went down. I'm not sending any invoices for this. Travel, conference and travel numbers today, it went up $100. That also covers when we had to, say, for instance,
Service contract.
a couple, weeks ago, we had to go get a set of tires for one of the old ones. And our large trucks do not have, easy gas, so we have to pay for that, and that's reimbursed through that line item. So we had to take a large truck over to take dollar charges from weeks ago, Wall Women Bridge, so that's to cover those expenses. Landscape supply went up. It just seems like that number keeps increasing every year. Every time we get new flowers, new ferns, we have to buy fertilizers and whatnot to maintain those plants. As well as the cost of those fertilizers with all the new synthetic materials that are coming out. It's getting more expensive. Maintenance and repair supplies, that's the toilet paper. We have 2 new buildings coming online.
And we're upgrading.
We're gonna save some money in that line item because we're gonna have hand drivers across the street and not taking it out.
Right.
We still need toilet paper upgraded.
Oh, they don't have a new thing for that?
Rocky, I have new samples.
Okay, let's see, moving down. Vehicle repair,
Safety compliance.
Safety compliance, the only, I believe the only number that is changing there is for our fire inspections on the system. So yearly, we have to do an annual inspection on all of our fire systems. And that's why the service contract went up in both repairs and in contracts themselves. All the other numbers stay the same.
Gasoline.
Gasoline. That didn't change, did that change? Yeah, that changed.
No,
Yeah.
same. It's the same.
Same.
Just
But
It's the same. Moving on.
And then tipping fees. That's tipping fees for the MUA, for our, everything from our metals to bulk items to,
There we go.
our everyday trash pickup.
And the MUA is constantly going up, so that figures goes up.
Between electric, the
Went down.
gas,
Got it down.
the MUA fees, whether it's for sanitary sewer or for landfill, are down.
Okay, you have that going down. MUA fees.
Yes, it did.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
If
Just
you
want to
look
make
at
sure.
the budget, we did save some money this year.
Okay.
I
Just make sure.
anticipated too much last year,
Okay.
but it always goes up.
All right, sorry. Water and sewer.
Gasoline, we spent too much money on gas last year, so I had to reset them. They went way over budget this year. A lot of that's because of, we don't, the anticipation of emergencies, use of the vehicles, it fluctuates. We have a bad year like we did this past winter, with the amount of breaks that we had a that's for the whatnot that we have in our stations to replace them and have them maintenance if necessary. And then computer supplies and repairs. Went up 3,000. Uniform contracts stay the same. Uniforms services stayed the same. Confined space went up $500.
Grant, what is that confined space?
Confined space, the water tower is confined space because there's only
Okay.
one egress.
All right.
Our wells, our reservoirs, they're considered confined space. If someone has to go down into one of those areas, in our chlorine room, it's confined space. If we have a chlorine leak, they have to go in there and they have to have that CDA certification and whatnot that pays for that.
Okay.
So I have to have equipment in order to get them into those areas and get them out safely. And that's what that covers. Okay, where was I?
Speed
You know,
what-
my goodness. Every home that has new service put in, every time every time we have to open up a street, we have an emergency repair, we have a contractor that's gonna build a house, we have any kind of maintenance that we have to do. We have to call in a markup. And we also, if we do any work on Third Avenue, we have to send a permit to the county, and that costs us money. Every time we call in a markup, it costs us money. And we exceeded that over the last couple of years. And this is to make sure that those markups are paid for. And it doesn't come out of any other line item. So that's why that increased by $1,700. Pumps, where am I at?
Water pipe,
Water pipe supplies, that's for all the blue pipe that you see goes in the ground, all the meter boxes, fittings, earths, anything that needs to be replaced in any of the water services, fire services, and whatnot. Sewer's the same way, after replacing pipe, replacing laterals, replacing risers.
Okay. No, Zoe, just OE tonight. You're good. Okay, that is everybody's budget. Feel free to read it all at your leisure. Any questions, you can reach out to me or to Jim or respective department heads.
So I have a question. Is this what we looked at today, is this what has been, is this the first blush, or have you seen it a couple of times, it went back? This is first blush for, okay. All right, what else we got? Anything else? Any other reports in any of the committees?
That's it.
One thing I will bring back is Planning Board. We did go over in Planning Board the definition of a landing to make that change in the ordinance that was introduced. And the, what you're going to see come forward, the Planning Board attorney was asked to draft the language. What you're going to see come forward is the landing, the size of the landing will depend upon the size of the house. So it's going to be, I want to say it was 15%. I can't remember exactly what the figure was or how the language, but you'll see a draft of that. We'll see the draft of it on the 10th of December.
It's going to be established based on an existing definition of length of house. It will be tailored to an existing definition that already is in place for length of house. It'll be a percentage thereof.
And Ray is not here, is he? Is Ray gone? So you'll see a draft of that probably next council meeting, because we're going to see it on the 10th. So you'll get a chance to see what that is, and it does, and it will have an actual definition of a landing. And there was nothing else from Planning Board. Right, that was it. That's all we did at Planning Board.
Yeah, we just reheard an application, that was it.
Okay, that's right. It was a subdivision that had not been recorded in a timely fashion, so we had to rehear it. There was no new facts, so we had to rehear it, and it was the same. It was a subdivision on 110th Street. Nothing else from Planning Board? Anything from any of the other committees? No?
You heard ours.
Would now be an appropriate time just to ask a couple of questions relating to the planning board?
Sure, sure.
Because I took a look at the properties that were provided a couple of weeks ago, and just had a couple questions relating to them. And first is whether there's any type of a diagram that would show potentially what it would look like if the ordinance were to be changed.
And when you say that, you mean these diagrams?
Yes.
I think that would be probably pretty easy to do, I would imagine. I don't know. So what you're saying is based on what the new language would be?
Yes.
We could see what
Could we see
what one could be.
what it would
Could ask Ray to do that.
with the changes in the setbacks?
I was, yeah,
just a-
yeah, because it's better to have a visual. The visual usually makes things a little, yeah, yes.
Exactly.
That's something we'll talk about on, bring to everybody on the 10th.
Okay.
That's our next planning board. Okay.
And the
And-
other question I have is what is the, and maybe this isn't for another session, but we talked about reasons to approve the changes in the setback. Is there anything that suggests as to any reason why we would not want to do that?
Whatever,
Do you understand my question?
yes, did we discuss the reasons why we would not want to do that? I think the main reason would be, just like anything else, you're changing established zoning regulations and setbacks that have been, we've been working with for years and years, and it could change The look or the proximity to the sidewalk, I think would be, I mean, the biggest reason not to change it is because we've been working with it so long that perhaps you don't want to infringe closer towards the sidewalk, would be, right? Am I explaining that properly? That would be the reason why we would not want to. Right, right.
I thought also.
Right, that's what would strike me is as you're walking, as I'm driving along, looking at things left and right, I think to myself, how close is that to the sidewalk? What would it look like there? What is happening here? So that would be the reason not to do it. Yeah, that, I would think, would be one of the reasons
I
not to
think-
do it.
I think that the zoning laws have worked so well for the town to date. That's why the town looks as nice as it does. So anytime you're putting forth a change in those, it's very critical, and it raises alarm bells. At least in me, it does. You stop and look at it and say, gee, do we really want to do this?
And as it did
You
to me,
know,
so that's
so-
why I asked the question.
I think that's the primary concern in amending something like this.
And my last question is would this be related in any way to the changes in the height? Because if, as a result of being able to go up higher, that means potentially I would think that the stairs would be steeper.
It is a repercussion of the new height requirements. Because what you're saying, in order to stay within the setback, you're either going to have a real steep set of stairs, or you're going to be building, it's going to be recessed into the home.
That's the primary, that was the
That was
primary
the-
driver
the
behind it.
driver.
There's also has been, in the past, a lot of discussion from design professionals allowing for more design diversity. A lot of the homes are put in a box, including that stair set, so the facade of that home is very, two-dimensional. So it's everything within that square box. So this will allow for more design diversity, but that's secondary to exactly what you pointed out. Homes are going higher. So not only are they going higher, but what you want to allow is safety in traversing from grade to the front porch. You will end up, if we were not to head in this direction, you'll end up with the minimum amount of stair tread. And if you do that minimum and you're going that high, you'll find that stair sets can be, somewhat treacherous. Even though they're to code, they can be somewhat treacherous if your tread is not that full 12-inch tread that you have to step on. So I think it allows for safety in traversing from grade. It gives you more room to put a bigger stair tread on as you go up to the new height elevation and still keep a 12-inch stair tread.
Thank you for clarifying.
But however, we have been working with that ever since the elevations have continued to go up, where they have to go up higher, and some places don't have to go up higher. And I think that the community, or the architects and the construction people, should be complimented, because as I said before, I ride around and I see how different some people are doing it, and it's completely attractive, and I don't think they'd be allowed to do if it was not safe. My concern is, again, changing a setback, as Judy said, that's been in place by the people in the 80s and the 90s that spent hundreds of hours planning a lot coverage, keeping the setbacks in this town different than other towns, and staying, the buzzword way back then was density and bulk, because the houses back then were starting to get bigger, and they're certainly bigger now. But they worked very hard to make sure that the front yards, side yards, and backyard setbacks were quaint to this town, and we were more strict than our neighbors. And I think that the work that was done then was done in a different generation, where they did not want the front to be more than, to be any closer to the street, because of the design of the community. And I do think that it will change the community. I think that people, I'm not sure yet that we do have the ordinances of what we can do in a front yard. When you talk about a set of steps, and I know you're working on that, but can those steps be huge steps going down the front of a house and going out another 5 feet? Will that change the community? I think it will. I do think it will. So I'm concerned about it. I think that we have set an amazing example of tight zoning, and I understand heights, I understand all that, but I see right now that people are working around the ordinances that we have had for years and years and years, and they seem to be working. I can't see going out another 5 feet in the front of a house with steps and/or now, which really concerns me, is a landing a level surface, or is a landing like a deck? Is a landing in ground? Is it dirt? Is it concrete, or is it a wooden structure? I don't know what the description of a landing is.
Well, if you go on 104th Street around the curb, you'll see the landing. And it's a home that's built high, steps coming down here, and it's a landing.
Out,
You can't call it a porch, you can't call it anything other than,
Is it defined, is a landing defined in
is
the?
it in the setback? Is it 15 feet back? Or is it encroaching?
barely probably 15 feet back.
Well, it should be, you know.
Because I don't know if it's an actual, that's what
Sure
I
it
used to
is.
say, to define, is
I don't
landing
know
a
what
defined
I know
term.
what I think a landing is, but I'm not sure that everybody's ever going to agree on that.
Well, the other thing that I noticed as I was looking at some of the properties is and I don't know whether this is unique, but using slate to extend the stairs. And whether that, and if that becomes like more of a landscaping versus the stairs.
That's exactly what it is.
And, you know, how that is, would also apply for the variances.
If it uses earth and then has perhaps a paver, a couple sets of bluestone with a retaining wall, and it's separate from the actual stair set that it's attached to the house or the porch, that's becomes part of landscaping coverage. So
Even
it's
if
a
it has
different,
steps.
it's a different animal, yes.
But if it's a different level, doesn't that become a landing?
That's what I was
Not if
thinking.
there's, you know, there's a gray area there, obviously, and how tightly you can define this. I mean, obviously, if there's grass on it, you know, is it a hill? Is it, you know, you could conceivably have grass everywhere that you walk up a hill and then get to your set of stairs. So at what point does it become a structure versus, you know, pavered landscaping? So I think it's pretty difficult to define that in terms of an ordinance, but, you know, it's certainly something to consider. I think more importantly is what the planning board did, and Mayor Judy already mentioned, is that we're going to define a landing to a certain maximum width based on the length of the existing house or the house that exists or is to be constructed. But to Josie's point, I want to point something out, and it might be worth having Mark Asher forward the information. He has a lot of detailed information that he had brought forward at the planning board meeting he attended and spoke at in favor of this amendment. And he has considerable photographic evidence of old homes, old Stone Harbor homes, where the stair sets actually do come out all the way to the sidewalk. So not even as...
I'm that old, I remember them.
Well, I'm just think it bears mentioning
Yeah.
that you say, you know, and I still think Stone Harbor's code, regardless of this change or not, is the premier zoning code. It will remain so with this amendment. This is really tailored to what we're up against going forward. This is building for the future. This isn't an end around. This isn't an opportunity to infringe. This is looking forward to what we're up against in the next 50 years, where these houses are going, what level they're going to, and making our town look as charming as it does now, even more charming, with the design, with the allowing more design diversity, but also achieving higher heights. Again, I mentioned it before, and North Carolina is a lovely place. I just would like to see our homes not look like that. And if you don't allow this type of change to take place, that's what we're going to end up with. So,
Oh, and as a point of order, we already introduced the ordinance to do it, so we're not going to learn about a landing until January.
that's correct.
Right.
So that ordinance comes up when for adoption?
Next meeting.
Next meeting.
So we'd be
Third and
voting
final.
on something that is not complete.
It'd be the same thing what we just did with the plastics ordinance. where we continued forward knowing that we were going to change a detail, and we went through with
Well,
that.
but is
ordinance,
it-
That's a
so to
bigger
speak.
Is
thing
it
than a
critical that-
plastic bag.
Is it critical that we have to do that? I mean, we can't wait till January to do it all at one time?
That's
We
what I
could,
thought.
we'd have to reintroduce,
That's
because you
what I-
can't carry over into the next year. So we could do,
Maybe we should have Asher,
Yeah, I think we're
Could
do
rushing
that.
something that's going to change
because
the
some
look
of
of this
us,
town.
I mean, I'm okay with it one day, and I'm worried about it the next day, but, so maybe he could.
well, one option
some
we
of-
could do is next meeting, we could vote to pull it, would be the problem, or we would just vote and not pass it.
Right.
Just vote it down, comes up for the, and just correct me if I'm wrong, it just comes up next meeting, and it's just voted down, it's a vote, and then it's voted down and then reintroduced in January with changes.
Well, unless I'm not understanding this correctly, and this is really tied to the grade level and our 11-foot top of block. So when a lot of the properties on the island that are already at a higher grade, they're not going to have this extreme height problem
Right.
coming down from their house to the grade level, correct?
Right.
So, that being said, do we want to have an ordinance that applies to all the houses when some of them don't need it?
Thank you.
Right,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
If
yeah.
People in the low-lying areas like
Don't
the
need it.
north end of town, the bayfront, where you
Right.
have low grade, and we're making them go to 12 feet, because that's, what is it, X zone? There, they
Right.
need some relief, but do we need
Right.
to, I mean, maybe we need to tie this to the grade level.
I thought it was
Oh.
tied to, I thought essentially it was tied to the zone that the house is in,
Well,
and the zone's defining the height.
And here's another question. If this passes, is there someone that has already put their steps, can they redo their steps and push them out 5 feet?
Was but I've been operating under the assumption, I guess I should say, that it is tied to the zone you're in.
Right.
So if you're in a zone that's going to require that height, this is relief that you would be getting to allow for the height. That it's not something that's going to be, and correct me if I'm wrong, that is not not something that's given to somebody in a zone that doesn't require their house go up that high.
Gotcha, but let's just
know
say
what I mean?
there's a house on 83rd and whatever street that is way, way up. They're already built, it's already done. Are they going to be able to now go out 5 more feet with a step? Can they change their steps? Can they retrofit their steps?
I do not know.
I think so.
They can.
I think so.
This applies
Yeah.
to all homes,
So you
right?
can.
New construction. Wow.
I mean, here's my thoughts. If there's this much discomfort with it, what we do is we introduce the third and final, and you vote it down. You vote it down. I do not want to be in the habit of pulling things once they're on an agenda, once they're in a queue, so on and so forth. You vote it down.
Exactly.
So we can do that next meeting, and then it's a matter, just simply, if people who have that much discomfort with it, and you want more information, vote it down, we'll get more information, and we'll reintroduce.
I think it's a critical enough decision that maybe that's the right path going forward. I mean, when you look at the bulkhead heights, we wrestled with that for 2 years.
Right.
We finally zeroed in on it and did it, and I
Right.
think we did the right thing. And this one, I mean, from listening to Reese and his questions, and I know Mrs. Rich has concerns with it, and I do too. I mean, I see it, I understand it, but I just,
So what we would do, it would be voted down.
Judy, let me just ask one thing. I think you had said at the previous council meeting that the zoning board and the planning board had gone over this for 6 months.
Zoning board is not involved.
And the planning board
The
has.
planning
for
board has been
months
going over
in
it.
detail.
Yes.
So do you feel that they'd present something to council that they would
I
be
think perhaps-
detrimental to Stone Harbor?
No, I don't think so, but I think the fact that somebody else had the benefit of 6 months of getting these questions answered and hearing from professionals firsthand, there's something to be said for that. So I think if people need to have that for a certain comfort level, then it should be provided. And so there's a difference between when you've been noodling with something for 6 months versus the first or second time you've seen it. So it, you know, it does make sense to me that people have some discomfort with it. So you just, it's not that, I mean, the old haste makes waste. If that's how the majority feels, then that's how we proceed.
What I'm trying to say is the planning board didn't have any discomfort passing it on to us, correct?
Right, but what I'm trying to say is the planning board had the advantage of hearing directly from design professionals, of talking about it meeting after meeting and expressing things like you guys are. And they had a firsthand in there, so I don't see, I feel like there's not a whole lot of comfort here. And if there's not a whole lot of comfort, then we vote it down and try to get to a comfort level where the majority feels comfortable.
I have one final question. I'm not familiar with the name Mark Asher, and I'm assuming he's an architect. Was he solicited by the planning board, or did he come to the planning board with this idea? And is that what the protocol has been, that architects came and presented this, or that the planning board initiated this idea and they called upon architects?
What happens is they hear it's being discussed and they come and offer an opinion, similar like a council meeting. It's the same kind of concept as out there. What happens is people are at the planning board meetings, or even the planning board is talking to the members of the public. And they're coming and they're listening because they want to know where it's going.
So it was initiated by the planning board, and why was that?
No, what, you mean the entire
The
ordinance?
concept, the concept.
The entire ordinance was in reaction to the heights that are of homes. What's being required now height-wise.
Okay, so that was it initiated by residents who came to the planning board?
No, it was initiated by the planning board.
And actually, it was the zoning official who had questions and concerns that brought it to us.
Is that where it came? Okay.
Because he had talked to some builders in the office going over some things, and he had some concerns with some of the designs coming through.
Well, what's happening is plans are showing up in the office at the new heights now, and I think the design professionals are like, how do we get up that high and still meet your setback? Because we're going from grade now, where we used to go to 9, we're adding 2 more feet on in this zone, so now we got to go up to 2 more feet to 11, and then your first floor finished elevation is obviously a foot above that because of your framing. So.
And it was the second thing that Ray Poudrier brought to us. I'm trying to remember the other one. It's because he's actually hands-on with the problems in his office, and he attends the planning board meetings, and he says, this is something that's been missed, or this is something that needs to be worked on. I'm trying to remember the one that was missed was that X zone.
Yeah.
And he brought that to the planning board's attention, that something was missed in the changing of the ordinance for.
The flood ordinance change.
So since he's day after day looking at plans, and he's at our meetings, he's telling us these are some issues that you're having in your ordinances.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because if you remember 2 weeks ago when he was standing there and we had questions, my final question to him was, if you are representing the people of Stone Harbor and the residents of Stone Harbor, are you comfortable with this? And at that point, he said no.
Right. And then we went back with him. He's at every meeting. At the meeting, he was facilitating how would we come to the size of the landing. And he's also asking us to be specific because he doesn't want to be in a position where it's not black and white. So then he's got to make decisions, or things then need to go for variances. And so when is a variance needed? He doesn't want to be in a position to have to make that decision in a gray area. So he's asking for some guidance in black and white.
And I agree with him, and by the same token, I don't think we should be expected to vote on anything that's not black and white, and this is not.
Right. And that's right.
I don't think he said no. I think he said, I have concerns, is exactly what he said.
I think he just wanted clarification of the landing. That was his issue.
was a landing. So,
That was after Ray brought it up,
Right.
and, you know, he
Yes.
thought about it and agreed.
so since we have already begun this process and have introduced this ordinance, we can't just simply say we're not going to do the next step, which is, you know, the second, third, and final reading. It will be introduced, and at that time, voted down, if that's where the majority feels it needs to be voted down to get to another comfort level, that's what will happen.
25 years.
Okay? So if we had time, we were going to go into closed session. We do not have time, so we'll go into closed session after the council meeting. So, right now then, nothing further for the work session. We need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Back in 5 minutes.